Namaste. So, I told you as last time that we discussed it, that there need to be some kind of also instrumental measurements taken about when one is doing meditation or pranayama and so on. I am talking about the scans and other things that are possible, which we will work out at a later time, but we need to look into this. So, this is very important to note because you are, first of all, you are IIT, people would like measurements. They will be, if you say, oh, it is like this, they will say, okay, but do you, what is the measurement for that? We needn't go to the extreme. I had a German friend, when I told him about the connection between the Jivatma and the Paramatma, he asked me how many strings are connected. So, we needn't go that far, but he is a German, you must remember. So, that is the attitude, scientific attitude. So, that is okay. So, at least we should have some instrumental analysis by which what I am proposing. Now, with this COVID second wave going on and raining COVID in Delhi, I do not think I can come there right now, at least to protect others, because people keep meeting me, nothing will happen to me. But now that also I would like to discuss here. Why did I say nothing will happen to me? Yeah, there must be some reason. This is part of the course actually, and this is what many people want to know. What I wanted to say is, there are these yogic texts like Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is basic. Now you would wonder why exploring consciousness has to go into this. Well, from our point of view, from my understanding, consciousness is very closely linked to also the body and the mind. Mind cannot function without consciousness, and a body fit and in good condition is required to have a healthy mind which can access the consciousness. So, the mind states are decided also by the health of the physical body, plus even the cells of the physical body seem to have some kind of consciousness. They reproduce, they excrete, they throw out what is not required. So, pranayama and other steps in yoga, including asanas, plus yama niyamas, which means regulation in the kind of diet that you have, goes a long way in controlling this. So, however, one important aspect of this, leave the other side, because it is a big study, it is a very deep study, it takes a long time. There are two basic things which I notice, since we are going to dwell a little bit on asana and pranayama. First, yama niyamas, we will come back to that, is that people have forgotten how to breathe, with the result that when there is an infection and there is some kind of a blockage and congestion in the lungs, people do not know how to deal with it. Of course, there is the fear. You know what happens with fear? You hear people are dying right and left, there is this fear. So, I have got COVID, now I am going to die. You see what happened? This is the connection between the mind and the body. The moment you have that fear, the body's resistance, the immune system, immunity becomes less. Body's immune system begins to, which is why fear always brings about this problem of reduced immunity. The immunity system collapses almost. In dire fear, it really becomes less. So, one needs to understand that everybody who has this is not dying. It is not like that. It is an infection, and most of the deaths are because of, very rarely because of clots, but mostly because of the lungs getting filled and it becomes pneumonia. There is mucus in the lungs which cannot be taken out and you can't breathe. So, there is loss of oxygen, and when there is no oxygen, then it affects the brain also. This is what happens. So, one thing is to handle this fear by saying that, well, there is an energy in us, in all of us, which can counteract any infection or any invasion from outside. This has to be gone. So, I have you will get the video tomorrow, it is out, it will be on our website. I have chanted the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. You do not have to chant it, you just put your headphones on and listen to it. It means free me from death, like the pumpkin that gets ripe falls off from its stalk, separate me from death. This is the mantra. It is not only the meaning of the mantra, it is the sound of the mantra that is very important. The sound immediately increases the resistance of the body to disease. There are many other mantras, but I have used this Mahamrityunjaya. So, and the other is, as I said, we have forgotten to breathe. So, even otherwise our oxygen content in our breathing has become low. One, because we live in crowded cities, because of the pollution, okay, I understand. But apart from that, we do shallow breathing. If one can continue to do deep breathing, there is very little chance of the infection getting hold of us so hard, because the lungs is full of oxygen to counter it. So, this is to do deep breathing, which means to take a deep breath. It is very simple. This is pranayama. Deep breath, hold for a second, only a second, breathe out. Again take a deep breath, put your hands up to your head like this or hold it, so that this part of the lungs becomes wider, there is less resistance, and then do. When you breathe out, do the Ujjayi breath, which is like not, but this breath. The other is balancing the prana in the Ida and the Pingala. The Ida and the Pingala, usually much of our disturbances in the body are due to an imbalance of the Ida and the Pingala. The Ida is the left side and the Pingala is the right side, and the breath of both the nostrils is connected to it. So, Anulom Vilom is something which you should daily practice, whether you COVID, no COVID. If you have been doing it from childhood, there is less resistance today, there will be more resistance today to the entry of this, but we are not, but we can do now, and which is, do not have to wait for it to come. That is what I am trying to say. Even those who have a mild attack should start doing, and it will probably reduce it. Now, do you close one nostril, any one? This is traditionally, this is how it is kept, but you can use any finger, it is okay. And then breathe in, hold, close this, breathe out, then breathe in through the same nostril, hold, breathe out. This is called alternate nostril breathing, Anulom Vilom. If you do this for a number of times, maybe 15 times, 10, 15 times, and then do the deep breathing, it will be even more effective, the deep breathing. Okay. The other one which we teach in Kriya Yoga, those who have taken Kriya from me will know this practice. Those who are not, I am going to give it separately. Anyhow, maybe it is already on YouTube. It is called the Brahmari. Brahmari, the word Brahmari actually means a bumblebee. There is a bumblebee that comes to your window sometimes and make. So, you are imitating the bumblebee. This is an excellent pranayam. First of all, recently from the WHO, a very senior doctor sent me a note. It is from 2 scientific journals in the US and England, and their own research in Geneva, which says that the practice of Brahmari produces nitric oxide in the nostrils and sinuses. Nitric oxide is a deterrent against virus, any kind of virus, even the new strain. So, a regular practice of Brahmari, why I am saying this, I am just trying to connect how good health, pranayam, they are all linked together, and from there go to, can somebody explore a consciousness when you are not well or sick or can't. So, This is very important to note. And the Brahmari is basically, don't do the Brahmari with your fingers and the nose, because that nowadays there is infection. If you are not properly, you shook hands with somebody, you are not washed, then it might go. So don't do that. Just do the simple Brahmari. Don't close your ears as you do in Kriya. Just do which means take a breath and try to exhale while making the sound of the Brahmari. Like, you get what I am trying to say? It's like take in, if you need to screw up your nose and mouth a little bit, it does not matter, but get that vibration on. Immediately builds nitric oxide in the system, and that is a great deterrent and prevent you against entry. Now this is all physical. Okay, we will go back to exploring consciousness. We have to be alive to explore consciousness, right? So, Yoga Sutras, not only Yoga Sutra Patanjali, the science of yoga is the link between the metaphysical ideas that are presented to us by the darshanas, like Sankhya, Vedanta and so on, which talk about consciousness, and the link between us with our limited and conditioned mind to understand what they are saying. This is yoga, the science. You can say science or art or whatever you want, it does not matter. The technique, I will put it that way. Why? Because our minds, you can even say brains, are so conditioned that we are not able to explore that which is beyond what we can access only through our five senses. Scientific instruments can go beyond the five senses, but that also cannot go beyond to the extent of touching consciousness. With my ordinary eye, I cannot see something which is very small, like a plant cell. If I slice a stem and put it on, how do I see how it functions? Through a microscope. So that microscope is an extension of my sense of sight, chakshu, one of the indriyas. A telescope helps me to see far, but as it is, my eye is conditioned to a certain distance, beyond that it cannot see. In the same way, there are hearing aids which help us get frequencies which the ears have now failed to get, suppose. So, these are extension instruments. We are saying there are also other instruments of perception in the human mind, I am sorry, in the human body and brain, which are usually not active. No, they are dormant. Many, they are dormant, which means what? When you say dormant, they exist, but they have not been opened up or explored enough. That is what it means. We are saying in yoga, the yogis say, the rishis say, that in the human brain, there are other instruments of perception which are lying dormant and which can be activated. When these are activated, then one's range of observation and experience exceeds what you can see only through your five senses. Now, normally when I say I know about something, it is like I make an image of that, whatever I see, through my instruments of perception. Suppose I am seeing, the instrument of perception is the eye. Now, with my eye, I can see only up to a certain limit, beyond that I cannot see. So, with the input that comes from my limited eye, that is the input, the data, that is fed into my brain, which is a fantastic computer. And this computer then builds a beautiful image of what I see. But remember that the input or the data comes from an instrument which is limited in its perceptions. It can also be sometimes illusory, and therefore the data that comes is often incomplete, sometimes even completely wrong. Here is an example. The sun rises in the morning, the sun sets in the evening. This is what the instrument of perception, my eye, says. But does the sun rise actually or set actually? Ask a high school boy, high school student. No, the earth moves. What do I see? I see the sunrise and the sunset. Based on that data, my mind has formed an idea about the sun. Now, how accurate is that? In fact, I wanted to discuss something, but we can't go into it right now. We will do it in the next class probably, because I want to lay stress on the practical right now. So, the practice of all meditation exercises and all the yogic practices are to activate those instruments of perception which are dormant in the human system, basically the brain. There are also other centers according to yoga along the spine, which is an extension of the brain. The spinal cord is actually an extension of the brain, and it has all the matter that is there in the brain right up to the bottom, the spinal cord. And in yogic terms, this is called the Sushumna Nadi, the channel which is called the Sushumna. So, in yoga, various ways or various postures, various breathing techniques are devised, so that these centers which are normally dormant are opened up. Now, I want to discuss something interesting. The master gland that takes care of our body in many ways is the pituitary, which is in the midbrain on the top, of course. It is the pituitary that even decides our moods sometimes. How come? When I am in a good mood, I am enjoying, I feel very blissful in meditation, for instance. What has happened? The pituitary has released a little extra amount of serotonin into my system, the feel good factor. See how it is linked with practices, that is what I am trying to say. Therefore, now if also if I can visualize beautifully and see some images, there is a little bit of dopamine in my system, which is also a feel good system. If it goes too much, then I get illusions and hallucinations. Now, a yogi knows how to balance this. One of the things that can happen when the pituitary produces more dopamine is that you are in your room and you think somebody else is standing there. There is nobody there. You might think it is a ghost. Actually, there is nobody there. This dopamine has increased. So, the capacity of the brain to conjure up images which do not exist has been made more, has increased. Now, it is the master gland which controls many things. It is part of the endocrine system. So, the practice of yoga is closely linked to the endocrine system. Then below the pituitary, there is a small little gland which is called the pineal. A lot of literature nowadays on pineal gland, everybody is talking about. In fact, somebody said that the Atman is pineal gland, which is stupid actually. Anyway, so there is this little pineal gland which is below the pituitary. What does the pineal gland do? It is one of those dormant glands which have not been, which automatically is activated at times, but we have no control over it. The yogic theory is that with the mind you can control these. This is the yogic theory. Normally these control our mind. So, What does the pineal gland do? It has, its function is to bring about sleep. The pineal gland has a certain chemical called melatonin. When melatonin goes into the bloodstream, one feels sleepy, one falls asleep. When the room is darkened and all the curtains are pulled, and if suppose there is lovely music, soft music going on, immediately melatonin is released. Melatonin is also released when your mind is calming down and is about to enter a meditative state. That is why many people, instead of entering a meditative state, fall asleep. Now, this is the, the close link between Shushupti and Turiya. Turiya is the state where one is fully aware everything is at rest. Shushupti is a state when one is not aware, but everything is at rest. And the deciding factor here is this little fellow, the pineal gland, which is sitting there, a tiny little thing with its melatonin. And this, the malfunctioning of this is what produces jet lag. When you travel and when your time changes from this country to another, or this state, in the US, so from one end to the other time changes, there is a jet lag. When this happens, the pineal gland is not able to function properly because it is confused because of the light and darkness. So, what is day becomes night, and what, so there is a problem. So, when you come back after jet lag, when you have a jet lag, you go to a doctor, he will say eat melatonin, they will give you a tablet, melatonin. So, it sets itself right. Now, let me explain to you a yogic process to set it right. Okay, before that, I travel abroad, and now this COVID has stunted all my travel, but usually I travel quite a bit. There are people who travel with me, they are usually surprised if why I do not have a jet lag. I did not get a jet lag even in Finland. In the season when I went to Finland, there were no nights, there were only days, but I slept when I wanted to sleep. Of course, I put some blinker on my eyes, those things which you put so that I do not see the light, but I did. That is one of the techniques to fool the pineal gland. Cover your eyes and make it dark. So, what is the technique I do, which you may be able to do when you have a jet lag? Lie down on your bed and hang your head down a bit freely. Don't hang it hard and don't do it any jerky motion, you will get a catch in your neck. Very slowly hang. Let the circulation increase in your head. Or do Sarvangasana if you are a yogi, or a Shirsasana. After 2 minutes, it adjusts itself because the circulation of blood has increased in here and the whole thing is put right. You see the connection between the mind and the body and the brain? That plus the fact that, as I said earlier, there are instruments of perception in the brain which are not active, which are dormant, and there are practices by which they can be made active. So, what happens when they get active? Your range of perception increases, and as they go on increasing, a time comes when they are completely deconditioned. When they are totally deconditioned, in that state, one begins to understand the concept of consciousness, pure consciousness, free of all restraints and conditionings and definitions and so on. So, the yogic process is a gradual process. It is a systematic step by step movement towards it. Now, I am saying that since we have scientifically the scanning machines and so on, we should fit that whatever electrodes or whatever they do, or even an EEG. You know what is an ECG, you know, for the heart. EEG is electroencephalograph, which measures the waves of the brain. Put 2 electrodes here, there, I do not know where they put, and then you can see the movement in a graph. I am saying at least to start with, minimally, have a EEG machine put the electrodes, keep 4 people together sitting or 2 people, one is meditating, the other is not, the other is watching a movie or something on a screen. Measure it as he meditates from one center to another as he does chakra dharana, or when he does pranayama, see what changes are taking place in that. This is a good way to experiment. Experimentally figure out what is going on in the brain at the moment. You may not see it like a scan, but you can see the graph. I would say in deep states of meditation, the graph would be completely like a peaceful wave, while the agitated mind would be tick, 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 going on. My guess, I don't know, I haven't tried. So, here are some of the things which can be scientifically examined and researched. Okay, so coming back to the Yoga Sutras. Now, according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it has 8 angas, which is why it is called Ashtanga. Nowhere Patanjali says Ashtanga in the Yoga Sutras, but since it has 8 angas, people call it Ashtanga Yoga. In fact, Patanjali calls it Kriya Yoga. The sadhana pada, what it says is swadhyaya, that means self study, it also means study of the self. Ishvara pranidhanani, surrendering to the Supreme. When you say surrendering to the Supreme, it means I am saying that with my conditioned mind it cannot be understood. I am surrendering that mind. I am allowing myself to be open to that which is beyond. And that entity or consciousness which is beyond is called Ishvara here. So, Ishvara pranidhanani iti Kriya Yoga. This is called Kriya Yoga. This is what Patanjali says. But it definitely has 8 parts, so it is Ashtanga. Now, what are the steps, practical steps? Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and the culmination, Samadhi. These are the 8 parts, 8 angas, 8 branches or 8 organs. So, start with Yama Niyama. Some restrictions have been placed on food habits and general behavior. Why? Because we are not dealing with a material object, we are dealing with consciousness, and consciousness is a living entity. It's connected to your emotions also, not just a physical thing like you put 2 and 2 together. You put 2 molecules of hydrogen to 1 molecule of oxygen, H2O. This is physical. Now, here we can't deal with only H2O, or we can't deal with the carbon oriented organic chemistry molecules with lot of C in it, carbon in. We need to look at emotions, realities which are beyond chemicals. So, therefore, when you are exploring consciousness, you have to start with your feelings, emotions, and then go, which is why Yama Niyamas are there. The first most important Yama is Ahimsa. So, one would wonder what has that got to do with an experimental understanding of consciousness. Please understand that consciousness is a living entity, and your emotions and your thought process, everything has a reflection or is reflected from it, let us put it that way. It is not a material thing which has nothing to do with your emotions. It is the core of your emotions, it is our awareness from which the whole thing starts. Now, what is Ahimsa? Ahimsa means to understand that all living beings have an intrinsic value, and you do not indulge in violence against any living being. Why? Because every living being is conscious. putting an end to any living being, however small, small happens every day by accident, but deliberately. Like when you breathe in, there will be so many things that go in and die and come back and so on, which is why the Jains have a mask, thinking that they will stop even those things from going in, but somehow some goes in. There is nothing we can do. We can't go to those extreme limits. In fact, after COVID came, many people are looking like Jain monks now with the masks on. 1,000 years they are wearing masks. Anyway, so I also have one, just to get out to speak clearly. So, ahimsa. Among the Jains, though, it is considered the highest dharma, ahimsa paramo dharma. But at least to understand that causing injury to other living beings is a wrong thing, and therefore one can live in this world and survive without injuring other living beings. It's a great step towards understanding, theoretically at least, that everything is conscious. So, when you are violent with someone, that particular individual consciousness is suffering, that awareness is suffering. So, to avoid that, they have said ahimsa. Now, there are extreme ways of doing it, there are also moderate ways of doing it. There was one teacher who was not from India. You know, there is the old rule among in the Old Testament. And what is that law? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Violence. One teacher came along. Poor man was crucified. Said, that is the old law, but I am telling you, bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. Pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. This is too much of a revolutionary thought for those days. No wonder he was hung on the cross. See, so ahimsa, even in the Bhagavad Gita, even though Arjuna is edged on to have a battle because he is fighting for dharma as a ruler, one of the things that is stressed in the chapter, 6th chapter on yoga, on meditation, is ahimsa. So, ahimsa is not only in a deed, it is also in a thought. When I want to kill somebody, I have already killed the person. Now, when you say this is not scientific because we are talking about, see, consciousness is not a material, it is linked to your emotions, it is linked to your thoughts, and to go there you need to also understand your thought process, your mind. It is not a material object, you can't put it in a weighing machine and say, oh, how many kgs, not possible. So, this is ahimsa. It is more a state of mind than actual, like you are sitting and meditating and the mosquito comes and bites you, get irritated, you say that mosquito is dead. You can't help it. What I am trying to say, understand as much as you can that you can live on this earth without causing injury to other living beings, including eating food. People are vegetarian not because they are holy, because they do not want to kill animals. So, there is this theory, oh, even plants are alive and that, but plants do not have a brain which is developed enough to recoil with pain as do animals. Plus, if you pluck an apple from a tree, the tree is not cut, only one apple, another apple will come next year. When you finish an animal, you are finishing an entity, total. So, plus the attitude of violence. I am sure that if there is this attitude, if I have to gain something, I do not mind bulldozing somebody else. This is also himsa. Now, that mind which is violent cannot attain the calmness and quality of tranquility that is required to understand consciousness in its pure form. That requires a lot of subtlety in the mind, and this is it's not a subtle mind, this is a violent mind which is gross. So, therefore, ahimsa has been put into Yama Niyamas. Well, you can also experiment and figure out consciousness as an entity without going through Yama Niyama and so on, but you will not be able to actually experience it unless you follow the Yama Niyamas. Okay. Another niyama is, the word used is Brahmacharya. Now, here is the problem. This is not a material object like in a lab. You can, your character can be anything, but you can have a microscope and figure out, no. You are exploring something which is inside you, not outside, which is you. And therefore, the emotions are closely linked with this. And when you say Brahmacharya, it need not necessarily mean only physical celibacy. Brahmacharya, any activity which takes you towards the Brahman, which is the truth, the absolute consciousness, is Brahmacharya. That does not mean I am celibate, but then I go on a rampage and kill many people. Then you are not a Brahmachari. Now, why this connection to celibacy in some way? Celibacy does not mean complete celibacy, it means the ability to control your instincts and use them when you want and withdraw from them when you want. If that is not the case, many of the great rishis who were seen in the Upanishads and the Vedas, they were all married people with children, and without indulging in sex they could not have had children. They are not sannyasins, all of them. In fact, you will find it difficult to find a single sannyasin in the Upanishadic period. I am not against sannyas, I am just saying. In these days, sometimes it is better to take on that sannyas so that you are not disturbed by other people. Now, look, I wear normal clothes, I go around. Who knows about me? I go and sit in an airport, I go to a restaurant, somebody comes, sir, will you have a beer? Because they do not know that I am not interested, you see, but if I wear that and if I shave my head and go, I do not even have to carry a danda, nobody will ask me. Can you go to a priest in a chair and say, have a beer? Nobody will dare do that. So, it has some reasons, but I am saying that why this is importance is laid on this is because when a human being has food and shelter, the most compelling thing is sex, especially when you are young. And when you indulge in sex, there is nothing wrong with that. Just imagine how much energy is spent on it, how much energy. It is tremendous. There is no energy which is that you spend which is as much as when you have a climax, for instance, physically. It is a burst of energy. Now, if this continues all the time, you know control, where is the energy left even to inquire into these matters? You need extraordinary energy and complete attention. You are distracted most of the time. So, what does yoga do? What the yogic practices do? They conserve the energy. You may use it when you like, but do not allow the senses to run away with your mind. Rather, the mind holds the senses and decides what is to be done and what is not to be done at a given point. You may indulge, but you may leave a certain period of time when you are not. You say, I am going to be free. Now, if there is a cooperative partner, that will be great, but if not, we have problems, that is a different matter. So, this energy which is gathered, which is not wasted, is converted into ojas, which is spiritual energy, and mind energy, tejas, so that it helps us to go deeper, penetrate into levels which are not possible if you do not have energy. So, it will be like riding a car which has no petrol, no fuel. Fuel has all been used just for going around in for a small pleasure trip, and when you want a long distance, there is no petrol. Petrol pumps have closed, COVID. So, this is why this word has been used. Don't mistake. Don't think that if I want to explore into this through yoga, I have to be totally Nitya Brahmacharya. It is not required. However, if I would say that if a sannyasin, a renunciant, indulges, then he is doing a great wrong, because he is not supposed to. He has decided I want. So, then it is an aberration. Otherwise, for us, it is okay, some control. Okay. Other Yamas and Niyamas which are described, let me explain. One is simple living, which again is because too complicated living is a great distraction. Simple. Try to simplify things. It does not mean that like in ancient times you have only a cowpea. It is not that. It is just to not have too many possessions. You are not caught up. If you are not caught up with it, it is all right. But most of us are caught up. There is a beautiful story in the Upanishads. The great king Janaka, the father of Sita, famous in the Ramayana, was a king of Videha, country called Videha. And his guru was the great teacher Yajnavalkya, who appears in many Upanishads, including the Brihadaranyaka. Now, Yajnavalkya used to hold his lessons, satsangs, in the forest, and there was always a seat reserved for Janaka in front, asana. So, he used to have a small asana for it. So, some of the rishis used to say, oh, because he is a king, he is putting this in front and giving him special regard and so on. So, one day somebody came running, a messenger, saying that there is a fire in Videha. A fire has broken out in Videha. So, the rishis and others who were sitting, who had nothing other than a kamandalu or a few clothes, they started running helter-skelter because they thought it is going to go. And Janaka was sitting steady and saying, yes sir, so what were you saying just now? Let us continue with the teaching. So, Yajnavalkya pointed to this man and said, this is why his seat is reserved here. You have nothing and you are so worried about that small thing. He has everything to lose, but he is sitting here. He wants to know the truth, which is why this simple living is prescribed. So, there are a few things. Then food, simple food, which means do not overeat and do not undereat. Do not starve. A yogi is not one who has lot of upavasas and starves. No, he eats food every day, but he eats it moderately. Except when it is too heavy, he might fast for a day, intermittent fasting, but not like dying by not eating food. That is not yoga. That is not a yogi's creed. So, food, wholesome food, limited food, the best theory is, the best practice is, when you sit down to eat, get up before you feel full, before you start burping and feeling full, get up, because there needs to be some space for water also. You just put in solids inside. So, moderation in food, not too spicy, not too bland. Little bit of spice helps increase the digestive system, the work of the digestive system, but not too much, so that every time you eat you have to go to the bathroom, no. So, all these are moderate intakes. Just as you moderately enjoy the senses, in the same way food also should become moderate, not too hot, not too cold. So, ice cream is out, and so on. I do not eat because I get immediately a throat problem, but you can eat. What I am trying to say is there is a moderation in everything, in all intakes, sensual as well as taste, food. If that moderation is there, then one is ready to go to the next step, which is asana. Then what do asanas do? Now, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali have not mentioned a single asana. It is very important to note. Not because Patanjali is not interested in asanas, because it is meant for something else. However, he mentions in one sentence, Sthira Sukham Asanam. That means any posture in which you can sit for a length of time in comfort is your asana. Now, this is from the point of view of meditation. That much only is mentioned by Patanjali, nothing else. If you want to elaborately understand asanas and how they have an effect on the body and the mind, importantly, then you have to go to the something as a classic text on yogic practice called Hatha Yoga Pradipika by Shivatmarama, Swatmarama. It's an ancient book, at least 300 years old, maybe 200 years old. It is called Hatha Yoga Pradipika, also available in translation. This elaborately describes the different asanas. In fact, it begins by saying that only there are 83 lakhs of asanas which only Shiva understands, we do not know, that is how it begins. Only Maheshwara understands the 83 lakhs of asanas, because they say there are as many asanas as the species on this earth. 83 lakhs is a rough estimate. It is only Maheshwara. However, the great teacher Maheshwara has given us 83 asanas to practice, which means each for each species one. So, for each lakh one. So, 83 asanas are described. You do not have to do all the asanas, you can still pick and choose and take 20 asanas out. I have made a model of 20, 21 asanas, which many people are practicing as yam yoga now. You do not have to say F yoga, but there are this. Now, among the asanas, there are asanas which are done where your spine is bent in front. These are the practicals, and the spine is bent backwards and the spine is twisted this way or that way, where you lie supine facing the earth, you lie face with your face up looking at the sky, and asanas where you sit in a posture with your legs folded in different patterns. So, these are roughly the idea of what some of the asanas. So, what do the asanas do? How they help you to go into the different levels of meditation, because they have an impact on your glands. Simple example. There is an asana called Matsyasana. Matsyasana, you may be doing your yoga in the morning. So, Matsyasana is sitting in Padmasana. You know what is Padmasana? It is made famous as the Buddha posture. The legs are like the petals of a lotus, so that is why. So, Padmasana. Sitting in Padmasana, you slowly lower yourself backwards, so that your body comes to rest, the back side of your body to the earth, to the ground, to the floor, and then you stretch your hands and hold the toes lying down. Push your head up so that there is a space between the neck and the ground, and look that way. This is Matsyasana. Now, when you do Matsyasana, what happens? The muscles, especially on this part, where the adrenal glands are located, are deeply massaged, apart from the other muscular exercise, they are massaged. Now, what happens when you get angry usually? You get really angry, the adrenaline from your adrenal glands flows into the bloodstream. This is anger, full anger. Body gets heated up, little bit temperature rise. Everything happens because a small bit of adrenaline is in your blood, more than usual, injected, and it comes from the adrenal glands, adrenal glands. Constant practice of Matsyasana. Also, the will to stop getting angry, that is important. If I say it is okay to get angry, then no Matsyasana is going to help. Suppose I have decided this anger does nothing to me. In my meditation, in my tranquility of mind, if I want to go beyond this little limited conditioning which I have, I shouldn't be getting angry, because it does nothing. In anger, actually the brain becomes, it can't think properly. In anger, a watchman may go and slap the head of the institution in anger, because at that point his reason does not work that he is the boss and I am the work, nothing happens. In the south of India, in Karnataka, there was a great philosopher and a mystic called Basaveshwara, Basavanna. He has written a lot of wonderful vachanas. The Lingaites originate from Basava. He said something very interesting. He says that when you get angry, when you are angry, nothing is happening to the guy who you are angry with. You are burning your own house inside. You know what happens when you constantly get angry? Your BP goes up. Then your heart problems will begin very early. So now what happens? Now anger is supposed to be a mental state. But what is the physical equivalent, chemical equivalent to that state? What is the chemical impulse? It is the adrenaline. Now, if you decide it's better to do things without getting angry, better to be peaceful and carry on with life, then if you then also do Matsyasana regularly, I bet you can bring your anger under control. People usually ask me this question, I don't want to be angry. Good, first step taken. But I am getting angry. How do? So, do Matsyasana regularly, half a minute or 1 minute every day for 6 months and see if your anger is under control. You have to be willing to control it, of course. If you think it is okay to be angry, then no Matsyasana, nothing will help. So, this is the impact of one example I am giving about an asana and how it has an impact on the mind and one's mood. And from there, so different asanas, different postures must be having different effects on the mood, on the mind. And since we are dealing with consciousness, the first step is body to mind, then mind to that which is subtler than the mind, which is awareness, consciousness and so on. If it exists, I think it does. So, this is tomorrow we will go into a couple of asanas and look at the psychological effects and the chemical effects of these asanas and move forward. Yeah. Now, either we can wind up or we can have questions for half an hour, as you like.
So, may I ask a question, sir?
Yes, please.
So, you started by talking of maintaining your confidence if you happen to catch COVID or to contract the coronavirus, or you're generally moving out, and
Right.
maintain that confidence level that not everybody is dying.
Right.
But then there is this thin line between confidence and overconfidence.
Yes.
Now, people misinterpret these words sometimes to think that they need not follow the
No.
guidelines. They don't have to follow. They don't need to follow social distancing.
This is very important to note. This is I have posted on the video also about which I talked, that take all the steps that are medically necessary. Having taken those steps, social distancing, keeping your hands clean and not taking them to your face all the time. Mask, so that you don't breathe in or you don't breathe out to somebody. Maintaining all this, I am saying, one should not have this fear that everybody is going to die. This is what I am talking about. You, like they say, trust in God, but tie your horse or it may run away. So, physically all these precautions are essential. I am not saying no. Having taken all these precautions, I am saying psychologically one is affected by this fear. I am only saying that that should not be there. It is not as if I am fearless, so I will not wear a mask. It is not. Look, I am also wearing a mask. We should invite disaster where there is none. Having said that, what I said was people usually as soon as they get infected, they get this tremendous fear that they are going to die. Even if it is a mild infection, they have tested positive, finish from that day, because I get close to 100 WhatsApps every day from people who are afraid of getting infected, who have been mildly infected, who are seriously infected. I deal with them. So, I know that there is a great deal of fear. Why? Because fear interferes with your immune system. So, your immune system becomes weak when you get frightened. You should be practical, take necessary steps, but there is no need to fear, because everybody who gets COVID does not die. I think that many cases the fear builds the it conditions the immune system so that it becomes almost powerless. So, therefore, it is good idea to have faith, to have listening to some mantras of chanting and so on and so forth. So, that will instill some strength. So, you come out faster from the hospital than you went in. That is what I mean. I am not saying that if you have an infection problem and you are chest congestion, you should not go to hospital. I am not saying that. I am only saying you will be able to deal with it better this way. That is all I am saying.
So, thank you, sir.
You are good you asked me this question, because people should not get the wrong idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Even I mean, even having contracted the virus in the initial stages, if you follow some steps like inhaling steam and all, you can prevent the virus from getting into the lungs and stuff.
Absolutely,
Some
absolutely.
precautions, yeah.
Yeah, also deep breathing. As I demonstrated, deep breathing, anulom vilom, alternate breathing and Brahmari. These are very useful techniques. The Brahmari especially because it builds the nitric oxide in your system, inhalation system, so that it stops too much of the virus is going into the lungs and affecting the lungs. Deep breathing, because all the bronchioles in your lungs expand and open up, and they have enough oxygen so that they do not go down very easily. The fight becomes stronger. They do not succumb to a passing virus. You know what I mean? So, these are important steps to follow. Especially I would say that in this particular stage we are passing through, when the new wave, the new kind of virus has come, some modified thing, and it is in a particularly virulent mode. Now, previously, now it looks like even if you do not touch your fingers to your nose, it can come through the air and go inside. This is the time when Brahmari would be very useful. If you do twice a day, thrice a day, it takes 2 minutes to do this exercise. However, again I repeat, all precautions have to be taken. Scientifically physical science, as far as physical science is concerned, there is this shortage of oxygen cylinders going everywhere now. I want to tell you that there are portable oxygen apparatuses available, even those are not available now, which may be very useful to buy and keep and share. You only to have different masks for different people. a little bit of oxygen. It's operated by battery. You just switch it on and put the oxygen meter in your finger and see how the oxygen is going up. Yeah, we have it in our swastika. Yesterday I experimented just to see if it is working. My normal oxygen count, because of my way of life and my meditation and my pranayama, is around 98 normally, 97, 98. So, that was the initial reading when they put the thing on the finger, the little instrument. So, then I put on that and switched on the oxygen apparatus. It went to 100, 102, 100. When it came to 102, I had that weird feeling of floating. So, I said enough, I am just trying out for fun. So, these apparatuses are available. So, if there is the fear of oxygen, better to get these. Deep breathing will solve most of the problems. And drive less, because you are polluting the air with the fumes. Buy electric cars, why not? I am not advertising for Tata's and Exxon, I am just saying, but buy electric cars. I think electric cars are a great solution soon, because they will reduce the pollution to almost minimum. Well, what to do with the discarded batteries, that is something to be worked out later, but at the moment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, thank you so much for explaining the concept of Brahmacharya. My question is, sir, how to control the thoughts when it comes to practicing Brahmacharya? I mean, abstinence seems easier and it is doable also. But especially in this digital world, and since
Exactly.
everything is based on the virtual network,
Yes.
it becomes slightly
Yes, yes.
difficult, and then it leaves a lot of guilt
I agree with you.
inside when you are not able to control such thoughts.
It's not slightly difficult, very difficult. Let's put it that way. So, what do I do? Okay, I am not a non-digital man totally. Okay, I also look at YouTube. I do little bit of. Okay, so what I do is I look at things, but when I go to YouTube, there are hundreds of things which are not what you thought, what you described. There are wonderful things also digitally available. There are talks, innumerable. Look, you go to I am not trying to praise myself, but go to the YouTube, go to that lens like thing there and press and look for Sri M. Many talks are there. Okay. If you do not want to see Sri M or listen to the talks, go to the great masters of music from old times. Bhimsen Joshi, Pandit Jasraj, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan, Amir Khan, go to the Malkauns sung by Bade Ghulam Ali, Ayena Balam, sung in such a. So, this you get entertainment, but you are not caught up in this only sexual thoughts or distracting thoughts. Instead of distracting thoughts, here you get a complete attention. Okay. Otherwise, go and see the travelogues and see the beautiful places around the world. So, if you want, you have to decide. I am not saying you are a young man, so I am not saying you should totally abstain, but try to use your time usefully in looking. Do not cut off digital, you can't live in this world. Go to things which actually make you more tranquil, more peaceful. There are on yoga, on meditation, on travel, on exercise, music, there are innumerable digital inputs available. So, go into that more than the other. That is the way to keep yourself from distraction. Okay, you said about guilt. From the point of view of the practice of yoga, guilt is not a good idea. So, if something has happened, do not be obsessed with it. Many people wanting to be free of a particular indulgence get obsessed with what they did before and keep on thinking about it so that it is repeated again. So, what has happened? Leave it. It is gone, done, finished. Do not get caught up in this obsession. In fact, you end up thinking more about it than when you are not. So, once this happened, do not have these guilt feelings, because they are of no use to you. Say that this is no use to me, I will just watch in future what happens and not get caught up in what happened before. With this attitude, if you carry on, then you can free yourself from guilt. Mainly because guilt is a deterrent and not something that helps you move forward. Regret, yes, but not guilt. Regret means, well, I did something which I do not want to do again, I will not do it again, I am sorry, that is okay, but move, do not hang on to that, do not stay on with that image, because then the mind tends to repeat itself again and again, whatever it concentrates on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hope you got what I am trying to say. We all pass through all these phases, I was also young once upon a time, but we can get out of it. I must tell you, I remember there was this great teacher who is no more, called Swami Chinmayananda. You must have read his Gita, you must have read his talks. He was one of the first persons to talk to teach the Gita in English properly, and he lots of young people were affected by him because of that, Swami Chinmayananda. So, once I remember a person came to him and said that everything is okay, Swamiji, I can stop, but I can't do without my Sunday beer. So, Swamiji looked at him and said, look at this, Swamiji, do you think he never had beer before? He said, I might have had more beer than you ever had at your age, but I was able to give up, so why can't you? So, we can. It is not once something is done, it does not mean you cannot get out of that. I am not asking whether you should have beer or not beer, I am just giving you an example of how one can, if one has the will, find a way.
Sir, if I may ask,
Yes, please.
sir, this Ishvara Pranidhana Dwa. See, can you please share a little bit more? Because many times people who are in the Bhakti Marg, they completely use this method of devotion. Is it similar to that in the yoga concept, or is it different?
It simply means, one, as far as yoga is concerned, from the yogic point of view, Ishvara Pranidhanatva means also through Ishvara Pranidhana. Tva means also. So, there are other ways, but also through Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana. Tva is added. Now, from yogic point of view, it means, one, to accept that one's mind and senses are limited and therefore, they cannot grasp the eternal consciousness. First, that acceptance has to be there. When this acceptance is made, then you say the sense organs or the ordinary mind as I know it cannot find. Then I say, maybe if I set this aside, surrender these faculties, there may be some other faculty opening up in me which will take me forward. Now, that something else opening up can be called Ishvara, which is, from the yogic and Sankhya point of view, Ishvara is the primordial intelligence, that which has been existing since the beginning of time to now, not in the sense of a creator God who fashions human beings, animals and makes the earth, no, consciousness, pure consciousness, primordial consciousness with all the wisdom, containing all the wisdom of all the ages and everything inside it. So, when I surrender, I am saying that in this infinite Ishvara, I surrender and ask for help, because using my limited faculties, I am not able to understand this. This would be the surrender, pranidhana, according to yogic science. Now, in Bhakti Marga, there are people who do not want to reason about anything, they just have a feeling that there is something beyond, which they call God or divine, with form or without form, and instead of going through all these exercises, they simply say, okay, I surrender, I cannot do anything, you take care of me. That is the surrender in the Bhakti Marga. If you look at it carefully, whatever be the modus operandi, ultimately it comes to that. Ultimately it comes to understanding one's limitations and saying, beyond this I cannot do, now take care. But there are two ways of looking. The Bhakti way of looking is more to do with the heart and the emotions and the mind, while the yogic way of looking at it is a little more to do with reasoning and systematic understanding. But if the ultimate result is the same, it does not matter which way. Now, a thinking person, what we call a buddhijeevi, cannot do what the bhakta does, not possible. The moment he says, no, 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 it can't be, the many thoughts will come into his mind. So then he goes through the path of jnana marga, and goes through the path of yoga, and finally reaches there. So I am saying we should neither dissuade this approach nor that approach. It is a question of approach depending upon one's mental makeup, one's circumstances and one's background. It could be also something to do with your past birth, which we can't go into now, because how we can't prove past birth at the moment. We can't. So it could be something to do with past birth, where a person has seen something and is eternally attracted by it, but the distractions of the world has kept the person away from it and is yearning to go back there. It is also possible. But it is rare, and we cannot discuss it because we can't prove past birth to anybody. I mean, can't put it in a test tube or do anything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So now I think we can wind up for the day. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.